At an eagerly anticipated court hearing in Manhattan, lawyers for the Trump Organization and its chief financial officer have pleaded not guilty to tax fraud. The prosecutor said there had been a sweeping and audacious illegal payment scheme at the former president's company. President Biden's been meeting the families of people who've died or are missing after the collapse of a huge apartment block in Miami last week. He also met rescue workers, calling their efforts incredible. The Canadian town, which recorded the country's highest ever temperature this week, has now been engulfed by a wildfire. The population's been evacuated. The temperature there reached 49.6 degrees Celsius in Lytton in British Columbia on Tuesday. And Princes William and Harry have unveiled a statue of their mother Diana on what would have been her 60th birthday.
In Myanmar, a landslide at a jade mine kills at least 120 people. Mississippi officials held a ceremony Wednesday for the state's former flag. The old flag was retired because of its ties to slavery and the U.S. Civil War. Uganda has opened its borders to thousands of refugees fleeing violence in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And the World Health Organization is sending 2 disease experts to China to study the novel coronavirus. The WHO warns that some nations still face a long, hard fight against COVID-19.
We begin with the coronavirus situation here in Tokyo, where officials are struggling with another surge in infections. Experts worry 4 weeks from now, there could be more than 1,000 new cases a day. Officials in the capital confirmed 673 new cases on Thursday. That's up 103 from the same day last week. It also marks a week-on-week increase for a 12th straight day.
Considering the increased foot traffic and the virus variants, cases are likely to increase faster than the third wave earlier this year.
Tokyo Governor Koike Yuriko attended this meeting virtually from her home. She was discharged from the hospital on Wednesday after being treated for fatigue.
I ask people again to cooperate with the Tokyo government in curbing foot traffic at night, strictly following measures to reduce infection risks and to work remotely.
As officials continue to ramp up the vaccine rollout, Chief Cabinet Secretary Kato Katsunobu says the government plans to start issuing documents to certify coronavirus vaccinations in late July. They are more often known as vaccine passports. The business community has been calling for them as they'll allow for smoother business travel overseas. Local municipalities will issue hard copies of the certificates to residents with valid passports. The government is considering digital certificates for the future. Now, U.S. pharmaceutical company Moderna says new research suggests its vaccine is also effective against the Delta variant first identified in India. The company says it's currently trying to develop additional vaccines that are effective against variants. The Tokyo Olympics are due to kick off in 3 weeks. Officials want to keep the coronavirus under control when teams arrive from overseas. So they've tightened measures at airports to completely separate them from other passengers. Narita Airport near Tokyo has created quarantine, immigration, and customs lanes, especially for foreign athletes and officials. Some of the first people to enter the country this way were about 20 members of the U.S. boxing team. Japanese officials say if any member of a foreign delegation tests positive for COVID-19, they'll identify close contacts, including other passengers. Then they'll send those people to an isolation facility. Some members of Samoa's Olympic team have lost their chance to compete because of the coronavirus. Officials say 3 weightlifters based in Samoa will stay home to protect their country. They say 8 Samoan athletes based abroad will be coming to Tokyo. Japan's Olympic Committee is pushing ahead with preparations. It named sprinter Yamagata Ryota as captain of Team Japan and table tennis player Ishikawa Kasumi as vice captain. They'll both be taking part in the Summer Games for the 3rd time in a row. The British government plans to offer coronavirus booster vaccines to vulnerable people before winter. So far, 60% of adults in the country have received 2 doses. Officials hope the booster will prolong the protection built up from the first 2 shots, as well as help to fend off variants. Frontline health workers and everyone over 70 will be eligible. The program is set to begin in September. It comes as authorities plan to lift most coronavirus restrictions on July 19th, despite a surge in infections.
Vaccination remains the absolute key out of this nightmare that we've been in for well over a year now. We all want to see this nightmare come to an end, and that means get out there and get your vaccine.
Meanwhile, health authorities in Scotland have reported nearly 2,000 coronavirus cases linked to fans watching the European Football Championship last month. Nearly two-thirds of those cases were people who traveled to London for Scotland's game against England on June 18th. At least 400 of them were inside the stadium to watch the match. Fans who did not have tickets were told not to travel to London because of coronavirus restrictions, but many gathered in large groups in the city ahead of the game, prompting police to disperse them. Indonesia's government says it'll tighten anti-coronavirus restrictions on daily and economic activities in the capital and other areas to stem another surge in infections. New daily cases across the nation hit a record of more than 21,000 on Wednesday. Indonesia has long reported the highest number of infections in Southeast Asia. President Joko Widodo announced on Thursday the stricter measures will be in force on the islands of Java and Bali from Saturday through July 20th. Non-essential businesses will be required to have all employees work from home. Shopping malls will be closed and dining inside restaurants will be banned. Supermarkets will be allowed to remain open, but for fewer hours and with a cap on shopper numbers. Domestic air travelers will be required to present negative PCR test results and have received at least one vaccine shot. The spread of the Delta variant is blamed for the recent spike that strained Indonesia's medical system. In Jakarta, 93% of hospital beds available for COVID-19 patients are already occupied. The government had hoped to resume accepting foreign tourists on Bali in July, but the spread of infections is making that plan uncertain. The Chinese Communist Party is celebrating its 100th anniversary. The world power is facing growing backlash from countries concerned about China's increasing assertiveness towards its neighbors and restrictions on its own people. President Xi Jinping used the commemoration to emphasize what he described as the advantages of one-party rule and pledged to oversee reunification with Taiwan. A 100-cannon salute kicked things off Thursday at Tiananmen Square in Beijing. Xi watched a military march before taking the podium. His speech focused on unity. Xi said the Chinese people have achieved unparalleled success thanks to Communist Party rule.
The Chinese Communist Party has achieved the goal we've had for 100 years. We have built a moderately prosperous society. This means that we have brought about a historic resolution to the problem of absolute poverty in China.
The president said the party will build what he called a great country in the years ahead. He went on to stress the leadership's determination to upgrade the country's military to safeguard sovereignty, security, and development. Xi said solving the Taiwan question and bringing about its complete reunification are unswerving historical tasks for the Chinese Communist Party. Taiwan reacted sharply to Xi's speech, with the Mainland Affairs Council saying its determination to defend its sovereignty remain unchanged. Regarding Hong Kong, Xi said China will steadily implement the national security law there and carry out enforcement when necessary.
We have nothing to do with those ceremonies held in Beijing. It's regrettable that Hong Kong is losing its liberties.
July 1st is the anniversary of Hong Kong's return to China in 1997. But the authorities have banned the usual pro-democracy rally, citing coronavirus restrictions. Japan's Ground Self-Defense Force is conducting joint drills with the U.S. Army at camps and training grounds across Japan. This is one of their largest ever exercises, with about 3,000 personnel taking part. Drills at Camp Amami in southwestern Japan are based on a scenario in which an enemy is conducting an offensive from the air. A U.S. Army interceptor missile unit stationed in Okinawa Prefecture has been deployed to the Amami region for the first time as part of the joint exercise. The aim of the drills is apparently to show close coordination between the countries with China in mind. Beijing has been increasing its activities in the East China Sea.
We aim to do our best to ensure Japan's security and also peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific region.
This exercise symbolizes that partnership, the friendship between the armies of the United States and Japan is ironclad.
The drills are scheduled to run through July 9th. The U.S. government says it'll move toward adding a third gender option on travel documents to ensure the fair treatment of sexual minorities. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said in a statement, the government will allow applicants to self-select their gender. He added there'll no longer be a requirement to provide medical certification in cases where the gender selected varies from the one assigned at birth. He said the State Department also aims to add a third gender marker for non-binary, intersex, and gender non-conforming people. Blinken stressed the move is part of a government effort to promote and protect the rights of sexual minorities. He did not give a specific time frame for adding the third option, saying the process is technologically complex and will require extensive system updates. U.S. President Joe Biden has made clear his administration's commitment to diversity. He appointed Pete Buttigieg to the post of Secretary of Transportation in the first example of an openly gay person becoming a member of the cabinet. In other news, a heat wave this week with the hottest temperatures ever recorded in Canada is now spawning dangerous wildfires. One village in the western province of British Columbia reached almost 50 degrees Celsius on Tuesday. Only a day later, that same community is going up in flames. People in the village of Lytton, about 3 hours north of Vancouver, were ordered to leave their homes and flee on Wednesday. Residents shared video online showing many structures engulfed in flames. Canadian public broadcaster CBC News is reporting winds of over 70 kilometers per hour that pushed a fire into the community, although officials don't know what sparked it. It's one of many wildfires that have been ignited in the province this week. Western Canada and northwestern parts of the United States have broken all-time temperature records over the past 5 days. Canadian officials are linking the heat to the sudden deaths of more than 100 people, many of them seniors. Most in the region do not have air conditioning because summers are usually much milder. And staying with the weather, chilly conditions have brought some rare snow into parts of Brazil. Our meteorologist Jonathan O has the details for there and elsewhere in our World Weather Report.
Hello, in the Southern Hemisphere, we are now in winter, and we had some cold air rolling through parts of Brazil, and that led to some snow. Here's a look at some of the video to give you an idea of how things look like on the ground as unseasonably cold weather battered the country, bringing rare snow to the state of Santa Catarina. The area received snow for 3 consecutive days, many areas blanketed with the white stuff, and people were delighted by it. According to the local weather agency, a cold front will continue to swing through the area this week, but no more snow is in the forecast. There's not a lot of precipitation to talk about in Brazil as we go throughout the next 24 hours. Maybe some showers way up toward the northern coastal areas, but that's just about it. Places like Brasilia and Rio de Janeiro looking at mainly dry forecasts as we head into Friday, highs in the low to mid-20s as we go through the day. Meanwhile, keeping an eye out on Tropical Storm Elsa as it has continued to gather momentum and moving toward the west. The storm is expected to mainly stay as a tropical storm, but it is prompting some warnings and watches over into the Antilles as the storm moves toward the north and west, and eventually moving closer toward Cuba as well as it go through the weekend. And so keeping an eye out on the system and see where it's headed as we go into the first part of next week. Across Japan, some heavy rain, especially into Shizuoka Prefecture and even into Tokyo. We saw some rain as well, with the rainy season front continuing to stay nearby. Not expected to move that much, and it's going to continue to stay around, so expect the rain to continue not just for Friday, But through the weekend, Saturday and Sunday looking wet for Tokyo and Osaka. Sapporo looking at a drier pattern, staying around temperatures in the mid to upper 20s as we go through the weekend. Naha also drying out with highs at around 30 degrees for the next few days. Hope you have a good day wherever you are.